Greetings to all and welcome to the last episode of Season 2 of Losing Our Marbles, a talk for two. And today we have a guest who I've been trying to find some way to get on. We both have very busy schedules, but I'm glad we finally found a way to make it work. So without further ado, let me introduce you now. Blackish.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for having me, sir.
Good to have you indeed. Welcome in. Hope things are okay in your world.
Things are okay. A little bit crazy. It's been one of those years, but
Sure
I'm
has.
glad we made some time to make this happen.
Yes, getting things going as we do. Well, I was just talking about schedules actually, and I think it would only make sense to go right into that to find some
Sure.
common ground among. We're both busy people. I think it's fair to say.
Busy people. Very fair to say, yes.
So how did you come to about settling on your stream schedule? I guess we could stream schedule.
I guess
how do you
I've kind of
navigate
been
that?
all over the place at various points. There was a time in my streamerverse life where I actually streamed 7 days a week. Much like you.
Yes.
I found that was a little overwhelming sometimes, and this was years ago now. For the past, I guess probably since the turn of the year, I started as like a weekday schedule. So I've been doing 5 days a week for a little while now, while I found myself with enough time to sort of dedicate to streaming. And then I found myself with some spare time in the evenings, and so I decided to do a couple nights a week for a little while, and then eventually that became 3 nights a week. And I found that works with my life. B, it allows me to stream as often as I feel like I can without sort of overdoing it. So I take a few nights during the week, and then the weekends typically for a little bit of off time, which I think is important. But I find that the 5 day a week thing, it's easy for me because it's just consistent. B, it's easy for me to sort of promote because it's easy just to tell people I'll be here. Weekdays at noon. It's just simple. It's something people can kind of just register, especially the people that frequent my channel. And then adding a few nights a week also, I think, sort of caters to folks whose schedules don't work out during the middle of the day. So I think it's important sort of to cater to, people from different areas and different schedules. So
Right. Yeah, I think for me it comes more down to, I guess advertising would be the way to look at it. Because I try to focus on events. So like I have the 1 hour track night, I have Thursday Flare night, I have the builder questionnaire night, I have the tilting questionnaire night, record hunters that I do, all that stuff. So I try to have like weekly events essentially, and I try to schedule them more like prime time, like 7 p.m. stuff. But then I have regular streams where I'll just tilt and hang out or do some building or whatever, play another game that I just kind of do when I have a chance to do. So similar approach, I think.
There's a lot of value in like you said, having events and sort of mixing it up, and not only just for your viewers but for you as well, because it kind of gets the monotony out of there a little bit. It's something I'd like to expand a little bit more myself on. Dedicating nights to specific things or days to specific things, which is something I haven't really got around to yet as much as I should. So I'm a little bit envious.
I really equate Twitch to kind of like television in that regard. There's always something on, and it's not so much a channel that has a different show, but each show has a different channel.
Right.
And so kind of adopting that TV format, like every Tuesday at 7 p.m., right? Like it just gets, it kind of already is established in the viewer base, I think. So if you can tap
grow the
into
network, and then you branch out and have different events for different people's likes and tastes kind of deal, for sure.
Exactly. So yeah, it's good stuff. I can't recommend it 7 days a week. It's
I'm gonna ask you about that a little bit later, but it's got to get a little bit grueling. Having done it myself, I understand what goes into having that to dedicate yourself to every single night. And there's got to be some times where the last thing in the world you want to do is really hit that live button, and we all have things going on from time to time, and it gets grueling, and it really is when you dedicate yourself to every single night. It's like you lose your ability to just kind of hit the brakes a little bit from time to time, and I know how that goes. It's something
I always keep tabs on that, and being a bit of a freak that I am, like I can probably do this longer than most people.
Sure.
Um, and not to say that's necessarily a good thing, but I have the benefit of having established a community
Sure.
that's like, when's the last time you took a break? Like maybe, right? And having
Right.
other people that, either invite me to visit them or offer to visit me. And it's kind of like a forced break, right? It's like, well, I'm going to show up for the next 4 days and you better not be streaming. It's like, okay.
Right. Well, it's like you have the benefit of having done this long enough to sort of be able to gauge, the benefit versus the risk that you're
Right.
subjecting yourself to. And I think a lot of people, especially newer streamers, don't have that perspective or that experience in the streamerverse. So it's like, as a lot of newer streamers ask for advice, and I'm sure you get a lot of questions too from brand new streamers that are like, what is the best thing to do? What's the best schedule to keep? How long should I stream? Like, what's the best thing for me to do? And you have to be careful about answering those questions to people because it's like you have that perspective and a lot of people don't. And it's like you could say, well, I stream 7 nights a week and it works for me because I can make it work. But that might not be the same experience for somebody who's new to it. And so,
Right.
as back when I used to do 7 nights a week, I had the same issue. It was like it worked for me because I knew how to make it work. But
Right.
somebody who might not, there's a danger involved with that because the burnout is real with
Yeah.
folks, and you can easily lose the motivation in a hurry. Trying to keep a schedule that you're not really emotionally or physically prepared for. It's a big deal. So
Yeah. I think that, again, you brought up the idea of like experience. And that's a big part of it because it gets to that point where you feel like you have to keep streaming to keep up the schedule.
right,
And that becomes more important than the quality of the stream. And I think that's the biggest thing that experience teaches you. It's like it doesn't matter how many days you want to stream or how often you want to stream. The streams have to be worth watching. And if you're so worried about streaming every day that you're starting to sacrifice the quality because you're not all there or you're not really wanting to do it or you don't have the energy to do it, that's what's going to suffer and that's what's going to hurt you.
for sure. And you got to be constantly asking yourself that question. It's like you're always analyzing yourself in hindsight and saying, is the quality suffering? Am I keeping a high enough consistency rate that there's as much of a value to it as possible and people know when to expect to see me? And it's like that's where the real value is in streaming as often as you possibly can, is that people learn to expect to know when you're live, and there are people that will return just based on the fact that they subconsciously just know you're going to be live and they tune in because of it. So
Right.
that's where the value in that is. But like you said, if the quality is suffering because of it, then you may be doing more harm than good. And so it's
Right.
constantly sort of balancing, those two things all the time. And it's a real challenge. It's not easy. It's not easy to do.
Yeah. And I think, too, especially in the marbles community, it can get a little bit convoluted because you have like the grind to hide behind and where
Sure.
like you can say, well, it's okay that my stream is shitty because I'm grinding. It's supposed to be miserable. It's like, well, not really, actually. So I think that's one of those unique facets of the marbles community for sure. It's just that extra element of the grind that some people can get hung up on.
Yeah, and I guess I don't have too much of that because I really haven't gone hard grinding on either side, the streamer or the racer side. It's just my stream, my presentation is what it is, and it doesn't really lend itself well to grinding in either facet. I keep telling myself one of these seasons I'm gonna grind hard racer side and go for that, go for a gem run. I haven't yet, but I have an appreciation for what those folks go through.
Right.
The racers on the racer side. It's not. That's where marbles, you take the RNG out of marbles and it turns into a skill and an actual grind, and it can
Yeah.
really take a toll on people. So I have a respect for that and I have an appreciation for that, and I haven't pulled the trigger on either side of that yet. And so I'm not sure if I could really put up with. I think that I would lose a lot of the appreciation and the fun, maybe the love that I have for the game if I were to really attempt to grind hard. If I was
Right.
sitting here for 7-8 hours a day just running races over and over like a lot of people do, and they do it well and they do a good job with it. I can't stream the way that LT streams. That's just not my style.
Yeah.
And so I respect the hell out of them for it. It's just not my thing.
I agree. I agree. It all depends on what's true to you.
Right.
On that note, actually, because you actually like knocked out three questions in one by just elaborating on.
Yikes.
I was going to talk about consistency. I was going to talk
Sure.
about devotion to character and stuff like that. I actually had a nice comment in chat saying that they come back to your channel for your character alone. Um,
Well, and so that's it's always been like a thing of mine. I've recognized the value in finding ways to set yourself apart because that's the name of the game, right? It's
mm-hmm.
about because we're all sort of doing the same thing on one hand, where we're all sort of doing the same thing. We're hitting the live button, we're sitting in front of the camera, we're playing a game or doing a talk show, or in that sense, we're all doing the exact same thing, and we're all vying for the exact same overall general audience. The
Right.
viewership, the Twitch viewership in our case. That being said, it then becomes important to find minor or major ways to really set yourself apart, and that's where the real challenge is in becoming a streamer. A
Mm.
lot of people have this illusion when they first get into it. I'm going to be a streamer. I'm going to sit in front of the camera and people are going to come to watch me and I'm going to grow and eventually they're going to want to pay me money and I'm going to get famous and I'm going to make this a career. And everybody sort of starts at that general spot,
Right.
but
Right.
you quickly realize that you just don't survive in this world by keeping your mind set in that way. It's about really finding and developing and perfecting and improving upon ways to set yourself apart and make yourself a presentation that nobody else has and
Mm.
that people enjoy seeing and that they recognize you for as opposed to whatever anybody else is doing. And so in that sense, my character, of course, obviously what I do is very much a character. It's you can consider what I wear a costume, you consider what I do on stream a performance, and in a lot of ways it's exactly that. I try to be as sincere as possible in my message and my presentation and what I'm doing. That being said, it's very obviously a character, and it's something that I work hard on improving and something
Mm-hmm.
that I've worked hard on making as unique as I can without taking it over the top. And again, it's all a balancing act in that
Right.
regard. It's about finding something that works for you that's different than what everybody else is doing. And yeah, I think that's important. I try to tell new streamers that all the time. It's important to find what you can do to set yourself apart and improve upon it and never stop improving upon it.
Yeah, Bax and I had a really good conversation about that. The way he described it was models versus actors, where a model wants to look exactly like every other model, so that they're as ubiquitous and plastic and moldable as possible. And kind of in the grinder scheme of things, that is actually a forte to have, where
Sure.
you can, the game changes every season. You have to make the adjustments. You have to fit the meta, and you kind of just have to go with what is being thrown at you.
Sure.
Whereas the actor, which is much more what you're describing, is that idea of you want to be something that people are writing parts for, right? Like if you're trying to compete for a part, you're probably not going to get it. But if people are writing parts for you, then you're probably going to get those parts. And streaming is kind of the same thing with at least getting beyond a certain point. Is yes, you have to be a model in community building and social media and just the basic rudimentaries. But at some point, you do have to turn on that actor and be the person people seek to turn on rather than just one more in the pile, as it were.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about humility in a lot of ways, right? Because you have to
Mm-hmm.
recognize what works and why it works for everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
and then you need to understand that there's a framework you got to fall into, and there's a reason there are consistencies amongst streamers and their presentation and
Yeah.
things, the technical aspects, where you put yourself on the camera, on the screen, and how large you make yourself, and your quality settings, and the game that you're playing, how you're playing it. For example, in marbles, camera work, how you're angling cameras, what you're looking at, how you're looking at it, what you zoom in on, who you pay attention to, where and why, those sorts of things. There's a reason that works out better in
Mm-hmm.
certain circumstances than it would otherwise. And in that regard, you can't really sway too far from the norm. You got to recognize that and be able to work within a framework. Then that being said, then there are ways you can go above and beyond that and find things that are unique to you that can set you apart from everybody else. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like you said, the actor. And it's about finding your signature to all of those things.
Yeah.
And like you said, eventually, like you just that was a great analogy. Writing the part for the actor. Eventually, people people take enough note in you and your presentation and believe in what you're doing enough that they want to help you write those scripts for yourself. And you know, once you build the sort of community that's really on board with you, you don't have to look far to find people that really want to help you improve and can do it in, you know, a helpful and not really condescending way. And that's where it starts to get really beautiful as a streamer, is when you have people that believe in you enough to really want to work with you to help your presentation and make it better. And that's really cool for me. I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's not easy running a television show by yourself. It's good to have some help.
For sure.
It's good to have some help.
Yep. And that's what you're doing. You know, that's what you're doing as a streamer. You're doing all the parts. You're the director, you're the actors, you're the on-screen talent, you know, you're the writers, you're the editors, you know, you're all of it all at once. And, you know, even with help, exactly. And you know, you're the promoter, you know, you're the station, you're all the channels all at once, you know. And in one sense, that's what's fun about it. That's what makes it interesting and fun, is because you're not just tied down to one role or one part of it. On the other hand, it can be overwhelming, because the more you get into it, the deeper you get into it, the more you realize there is to do, and then the more you start learning, the more you realize the more you could do.
Yeah.
And it just never ends. It just never ends, and it's so dynamic, and that's what makes it fun in one sense and stressful in another.
Right. Well, I have a question that in my brain is related, but might not be related at all. But
all right.
I'm interested to know what you're like, if you're willing to talk about it, your in real life style. Like, how do you present yourself in real life, if you're comfortable talking about it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on the company in a lot of ways. You know, it's yeah. I come from a firefighting EMS background, so you know, with my duties and the jobs that I've had, you know, I've worked for governments most of my adult life. And so in that regard, I'm a much more laid back, a much more serious type of personality. I feel like I spend most of my time being more laid back and on a more serious level IRL, right. Just in my professional experience. That being said, my personality, myself, the way that I am around my family and my friends is a lot like what you see live on stream. You know, I try not to take much of anything too seriously, you know, when I'm around laid back company. So, you know, it's the same sort of jokes, the same sarcasm, the same sort of witty responses to a little bit of everything. You know, I'm constantly saying and posting dad jokes throughout my chats and my live streams. I'm all about that. Like that really is what I'm like. So on the one hand, my private personality is a lot like this character, the Eye Blackish character. Right. But there's a whole another side of me that really takes up a good chunk of my time IRL. That's regimented and serious and a much different sort of person, I guess you might say. You know, so it's. I guess that's why it works out on stream. That's probably why I've developed the Eye Blackish character the way that I have, is because it's sort of a reprieve from what I've normally had to spend a lot of my time doing in my professional private life. So, for
sure, yeah, I get that a lot. I think it was. I don't know if it was a compliment or an insult, but in recent history, one thing that was said to me is I was chatting to someone kind of seriously, just person to person offline, and their parting remark was, "I'm actually surprised that you care about other people, because I never thought you would have." Based on your stream. And I was like, well, I mean, that's kind of what some of my characters go for on stream, so thank you, but also I am a human being with a heart. Like, sure.
It's one of those things, you know, you got to take it as like sincere feedback, right? Because it's like, okay, because that tells you a lot about what people are getting from you,
right?
You know,
and so while one of my characters, I want that to be the image. I don't want that to be the channel's image. Like, so it's like, you have to like pause and like look back, like, is there a way? Do we need to change something, adjust something, shift something? So,
and I try to always be like that, and you know, I try to pay close attention to the feedback I get, whatever kind of feedback it is. You know, whether it's significant, seemingly insignificant, positive, negative, it's all valuable, you know, for its own reason. And if you can. That's where the benefit is of presenting yourself in some form of characters, because then you can sort of separate yourself from the character and you can analyze the character versus taking everything you hear about you as some sort of, some sort of either an insult or a compliment. It's not an insult or compliment to you. It's to the character, and it's easier to analyze that way.
It's also a lot more liberating just for stream content. Like if you're engaging with chat, and if you get like trolls in your chat or people are making comments you're not really a fan of in chat, you can. It's kind of that online anonymity, right? Like you can just play a part and just go to town on them for a little bit, if that's within your character. Just to you don't have to worry about it being a bad reflection of you, if it's in the spirit of the character, right?
Exactly. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is make fun of myself, and it's easier to do knowing that I'm presenting a character to my stream as opposed to just trying to be myself, and not that I think there's much of a problem with just being yourself on stream, but I think people miss out on the opportunity to separate themselves from what they're doing live on stream if they don't present themselves as a character.
Yeah, and I think
and there's a time and a place for all of it,
Yeah, I think there's a health to it, right? Because if you have like a 1-to-1 correlative link between yourself and yourself on stream, then you're gonna have a very hard time separating what people say about your stream with how you feel about yourself, right?
Exactly.
And then also just being able to look at it too, because if you want to change something about your stream, then you're going to be resistant because it's going to feel like you're changing something about yourself.
Exactly.
So
it's important. It's important to periodically change things or mix things up or add or take things away from your stream, and then to be able to look back on them in hindsight and analyze what works and what doesn't, and what made this better and what made it worse. And if you're looking at that through the lens of, well, now people like me less or now people like me more, you're missing the point to improve or not, upon the presentation. So it becomes that much more important, and then once you get deeper behind the scenes, when you're building communities and when you have people that are helping you on a professional level, maybe not live on stream, but in the background, in the community building aspect of it, it becomes important to be able to separate yourself in that regard too. So it's like, I'm the crazy character I am live on stream, but when it comes to the management of communities or the teams of people that I build to help behind the scenes, you need to be able to sort of, again, separate yourself from the presentation and get down to business when it happens, So a lot of people are taken by surprise, by me when they start to get to know me personally away from the live stream, because like I said, I'm a very regimented sort of, management kind of person because of my fire background, so there's, chain of command is important to me, and just personnel management and people having roles and sticking to them and kind of keeping things differentiated in that manner. That becomes important to me.
Sounds
not
like
on
a good
stream,
life
and
to me. I mean, I'm on board. I'm sold. Where do I sign up?
We can find a spot for you. So yeah, but like you said, it's I guess there isn't really a right or wrong way to do it, but there's a lot of value. There's a lot of value in separating yourself from the character that you play, and I try to do that as often as possible.
I agree. Well, speaking of interesting characters, you seem to have made some additions to your character as of late.
Oh man,
I heard you took some advice from people who know, and it seems to be going better, actually. So
it's going better. Yeah. So I mean, look, it all started in a live stream. One would have been early October. I actually lost a wager. I lost a wager in my live stream, and I had to grow all the facial hair out for a month. That was the wager, right? I lost, had to grow it out for a month. Whatever, no problem, no big deal. As we got towards the end of that, and the mustache was starting to grow quite long. Okay, and I don't know exactly which point it grew into. Hey, why don't you fashion it into a handlebar or something? Tidy it up, spiffy it up. Be like Shen. And I'm like, I don't know about that, you guys. And so that old wager turned into a new wager, which I lost. So I was 0 for 2. And that turned into me agreeing to shave everything except the stash and fashion it into a handlebar, which I had to do for a month. And so we're sort of getting towards the tail end of that lost wager as we speak. But like you said, you and several others who are, stash masters, provided some invaluable guidance on how to go about, making it look as presentable or ridiculous, depending on, how you think of it as possible.
Those are synonymous, actually. Inseparable.
They absolutely are.
Inseparable.
And so here we are. Here we are.
Yeah. Well, it's been great seeing it grow, both you and the mustache.
Well, I appreciate that.
You're definitely doing it right. It's actually like when you first entered call, it almost looked like you had like put on a fake mustache, which is that's what you want to go for. That's what you want to go for. That's when you know you're doing it right. When people are like, is that real? Like, it's.
I'd say probably once or twice a live stream, someone will come in and is that thing real? Is that real? That can't be real. That's not a real stash. I'm like, it's all me, unfortunately, But it's given me a whole new appreciation for folks who actually give real, honest, long-term efforts, like yourself at really maintaining something like that, because I've been going at it for a month and I'm like, holy cow, it's driving me wild, so it's exactly. So I mean, on the one hand it's like that, on the other hand it's like, it's something I'm kind of surprised at how much I'm like, you know what, this is kind of neat. It's kind of neat to care for facial hair in that kind of way, because I've never done that. It's really brand new to me, so it's something you got to like think about, and it adds a whole new dynamic to. Never mind the live stream, just life in general. Going out in public is a whole different ball game. When you wake up, it doesn't quite look like that. So it's it's a whole new facet of life that I never really understood anything about until the last couple months here. So so pretty neat, pretty neat. Yeah, I have a newfound respect for those of you that really put an honest effort into it, and I've been trying to do you guys justice. And,
been doing well. Doing well.
Well, I appreciate that.
I think at this point, any advice I could give at this point would be, once the wager's over, shave it all off, and then like just kind of think about it and be like, maybe there is a type of facial hair I might want to try, right? Who knows?
Yep.
Who knows?
I've done a little bit with like the beard over the years. I've done a little bit of styling with like the beard and kind of just a little bit. Tried a few different styles, but I did a little bit of a Fu Manchu one time for just for fun. I think it was like a school deal, like a crazy hair day or something like that. But I've never really gone too serious about it. This is the most serious any sort of facial hair styling I've ever experienced in my life, and I'm a bit overwhelmed, but I'm a lot more respectful about it after this.
You have a healthy part in the middle. Is that natural, or do you trim that?
It was natural. I only trim the long parts right at the bottom that go down over my lip. That's all that I've trimmed. Otherwise, it parted
goes
pretty well.
Like into the nose. Like there's no break. It's just all hair, which is why I can't do what you do, because it looks weird. Because it looks like there's just a black line across my face.
Yeah, I mean, I'm blessed with some really thick and it's thick and wiry hair that really goes well together. So a little bit of styling, a little bit of wax, and it all seems to hold together pretty well. And my facial hair grows like crazy. So it's like I'm lucky like that, given the fact that I'm trying to style it. But I can't imagine if it. I mean, it just parted naturally like that. It worked out very well.
Very fortunate.
Very fortunate, yes.
Cool.
Today was supposed to be the last day with the stash. This was the 1 month mark since I started styling it.
Glad we got you on right before.
Well, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I agreed to at least another few weeks here. So I have an event coming up on Christmas Eve.
Okay. That's right, you do.
I agreed with the chat. Yep.
We'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about it later. Yeah, we'll cover that.
Cool. Any questions of relevancy you may have you want to throw my way at this point in time?
I have a list here. Let me bring it up. So I got a few different kinds. Do you want to touch on marbles a little bit, or do you want to talk about you a little bit?
We've been dancing around marbles a little bit. We can dive in real.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, as somebody, that's been around marbles for a while now, in you, what are your general thoughts about the game in general, where it's at, where it's come from, how it's evolved, and then maybe after we can touch a little bit on like maybe where you see it going and what you anticipate, to see from the game and the studio and the community. And
Yeah.
there's a few conversations right there already.
Yep. Yep. Um, I think the game is growing very fast on the viewer base.
Sure.
I think the streamer base isn't growing as fast, but that's a good thing.
Sure.
And I think that growth is not going to be sustained with the studio as it is. I think they need
I would tend to agree.
more people or a division of labor with more people in each division to and it's not to say they're not doing enough, because they're doing a ton.
Sure.
But now that we're over 1 million people per season, there's like an expectation of innovation, to say. And with how many different ways marbles can be integrated, either with races, with grinding, with shows, with battle royale competitions, with tilting competitions, with building competitions, and now getting some more arcade modes going, like boost mode and fashion show, stuff like that. I just feel like each avenue needs its own R&D department behind it, in a way, to keep up with each of those communities, so that the community as a whole can continue to grow. So I wouldn't be surprised if the growth kind of halted and we kind of capped out at some point, just because there's not enough infrastructure to maintain that growth. But I could be wrong.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
It is a speculation at best on my part with that.
Of course, yeah, and we're just kind of spitballing here. I felt like personally, like for a while, it felt to me as if the game and the community was where it was supposed to be at, because of it felt like it was sprouting, and it felt like it was in sort of an infancy, so to speak. And we're talking 10, 15, 16 seasons into it, it was like, okay, things are growing, new things are rolling out, we're seeing improvements in a lot of these areas. And then I think, I'm not sure exactly when it was, or it was at a particular
season
point.
17.
Okay, then. All right, then. All of a sudden, it felt like it was a thing.
Yep.
It was a standalone thing, and there was roots to it, and all of a sudden, in order to advance any further in places that it will and does need to advance further, like you said, there needed to be some real weight put behind individual aspects of it. And again, not to say that they don't do a fantastic job and have a lot going on and are constantly working awfully hard, obviously, at maintaining, which is one set of responsibilities in and of itself, but also advancing and developing, which is a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
There needs to be more, like you said, is division of labor. There needs to be more resources that can dedicate themselves to those specific avenues. And the folks who are in charge over there, I believe they know this. Like it's not a secret. And it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how that occurs, and when that occurs.
Absolutely.
I have a lot of excitement about what the future holds for marbles, and I think a lot of us who have really staked a lot of our own streams and presentations on marbles as a whole.
Right.
It's exciting times. There's a lot of change happening, and it's good to see change happening, and it's good to see that people sort of have the mindset they do on the studio side, that's encouraging, and I look forward to the future.
Absolutely. Try to think if I had one more thing to add on top of that. I think with deconstructing the tournament pack and putting the community in charge of the creative event function, I think that's a good step. But I hope Pixel's doing it just to gain more insight and not so much as the direction to go down. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if there's one thing about Pixel, is that he is constantly sort of tweaking and testing things simply to take a step back and observe what happens. And that's obvious to anybody who's really paying close attention, is that he does a There's a lot of that. They do a lot of that. They do a lot of let's do this and see what happens, and we'll take some notes and then throw it on the note board for to use later or not. And that's a good thing. I think it's a positive thing to do. I think you can, like you said, insight
Yeah.
is valuable, hugely valuable, and so they very clearly and obviously do a lot of that, and that's a good thing. But like you said, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and I don't want to speculate live too much. I also don't want to give any opinion one way or another about this whole, the way they're doing away with the historic way they've done the tournament packages and
Right.
how those have been obtained. I think there are some. It opens the door to a lot of other unique ways for them to get these events set up, and it
Right.
sounds like they're moving much more in the sanctioned event type direction as opposed to the classic marbles tournament kind of style and format, which that could be an awesome thing. It sounds really exciting. That being said, there's some risk involved. There's a lot of risk involved, and
Yeah.
I hope that they tread very lightly in the way that they set up, the future mechanisms that organize all of these things. Because
Right.
there's
Right.
a
Yeah. I think.
there's rumblings and grumblings in the background about the direction it could potentially go and the sorts of things that might happen as a byproduct of it that
Mhm.
are there are some concerns out there, and I think some legitimate concerns, and again, it's one of those wait and see type deals, and
Yeah.
I hope that they tread lightly with it, and by all indications they will, and they do. So
Mhm. Exactly. All right.
so you kind of touched there on the moving away from the tournament style and moving more towards the events. Where
Mhm.
else might you see the direction going? Do I'd be interested to hear what in your head, which direction you see this all going.
Um.
In terms of the game itself and maybe additional like modes or tournaments or events, or how do you see all that working out?
Yeah. So that's kind of all partnered in with that, in the idea of like each avenue of the game kind of needs a person or people developing behind it. Um, and I think the community needs to be responded to, right? So there's a community of builders. So there should be a studio sponsored event for builders. And there is technically with the Backscast Test Luck end of season thing, but I feel like
Sure.
there could be more.
Sure.
Um, and then tilting, same idea, right? As I kind of was able to earn the title for official competition holder. Um, but I feel like there could be more. And, you know, going into streamers, I know he's aware of streamers needing a reward, and there's a lot of complications in there because ideally the best way to integrate streamer rewards is monetary, but that gets into a lot of red tape real fast.
Sure
So
does.
it's
Sure
hard
does.
to pull the trigger on something like that without a lot of legal work in ahead of time.
For sure.
And that's kind of something you have to develop simultaneously, right? Because you don't want to invest too much time into it if it's not going to work.
For
But
sure.
you want it to work if you do put the time into it. So it's like you have to build up the functionality and the legality at the same time. And that's like, well, like, that's a process and a half for sure.
It's a
So,
challenge. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot
right.
of risk.
So I think that's kind of where I stand right now, just as a whole, regardless of how you want to break it down. Is I really think it's a large enough community now that each avenue of exploration needs its own people, and each of those avenues needs some kind of studio sponsored event that gets attention to those avenues of the community. So, but like I said,
Yeah, I
I'm
can.
hoping that's what the community division for this season is
Right.
let people run their own events, really get those creative ideas out there that are not the traditional format, and kind of see what gets shaken loose.
Yeah, it seems like obviously that's the direction they're going, at least in the short term.
Hmm.
And I think that's what presents the least risk for the studio, which I can appreciate about their approach to that. It has to be. I don't envy the position the studio's at, where the community in the game has grown to a point where now you need to start taking some major risks and investing
Yeah.
time and efforts, and that equals money. in various projects, and it's
Yeah.
as it grows any further, it's going to require more and more than that, and that's a tough spot to be in when you're the one making those decisions and pulling those strings. And so, you know, it's like you said, it's the divisional labor thing. It's going to require expanding their organizational chart and creating, like you said, divisions that are focused on certain aspects of the game and certain development, and then you know then there's the whole management issue and keeping everything up and running and
Yeah.
expanding the server space, you know, and it never ends, and it only the risks only become greater and greater. And
Yeah.
so but it's necessary, and I think the game and the community is at a point where some of those risks are going to need to start being taken, and it'll be interesting to see for sure one way or another. So yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. The question I had was, what do you see for the future of the community? But I feel like we've already touched on that. Unless you have anything else to add to that kind of a
No, I mean,
question.
we kind of touched on that. You know, I think that they're I think that they seem to be attempting to expand at the rate to meet the needs of the community, which I think is appropriate. Um, there's That's what I'll say. That's what I'll say about that. I think that it appears that they attempt to be expanding the community and their interactions with the community and how they attempt to manage the community and respond to it in a way that matches sort of the growth and the needs and the available, you know, efforts of those who are placed into positions to sort of address those types of issues. So I think that's appropriate. There are, yeah, that's what I'll say about that. I think they're giving it a good honest effort anyway.
I agree. I agree. Cool. Well, that was a good rabbit hole to dive down for a while.
It was a pretty good rabbit hole. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking on my list here. I was gonna ask you, you know, briefly, if you wanted to, if you thought that maybe there was, do you foresee or do you think exist any issues currently with sort of fragmenting of the community in either a negative or even a positive way, you know, given the history and now the current growth and the position of the game, or where's maybe the direction you see that going? That's one of those risks,
Right.
you know, we kind of touched on, and maybe some of it has occurred, maybe some of it is occurring. Is that anything you have any thoughts about?
Um, well, so back in like early marbles, everyone who was regular kind of knew everyone who was regular,
Sure.
and that's feasible. But as has been proven over time, most people can only retain about 150 relationships at a time.
Sure.
So when you have a million people in a community, and each of them at a different level of involvement, each of them maybe looking for a different kind of thing to watch or get into. Not going to be the case where everyone knows everyone, and that will inevitably lead to, you know, clans, tribes, cliques, however you want to describe it. So it's just natural human behavior on that regard. So I don't put too much weight into cliques. I think the only important thing to watch out for is to making sure that there's not a clique that forms around people in positions of power.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
like you know, everyone involved is a human being, and so people like Spoo and Standard Damage, who are community managers, obviously they're going to have people they're close with and people they're not so close with, and as long as they can separate that from their managerial decisions, I don't see an issue with it. But I think, you know, that's something people are always concerned about because they know people are human. And, you know, when they're in a position of power, it's not always easy to make the right call or be objective or do what is seen as fair to most people, if not everybody.
For sure.
I haven't if I could give any egregious decisions made as far as I
Nope.
can tell. So
Nope, same.
Nothing
I
I'm worried
agree.
about at the
Again,
moment.
I think they do a good job, especially the folks that are up there in positions of power within the community. Like it makes sense why certain groups of people revolve around the certain groups of people that they do, and I don't
Right.
see anything nefarious going on. Obviously nefarious, and that's a positive thing. I think if there's one positive critique I could give is that I think that sometimes some of those folks could work on a little bit of the way they they interact in a public relations aspect with the community. It seems to be a lot of, if you know, you know, and if you don't,
Okay, I
don't
could
worry
see that.
about it.
Right.
You know, and
I could see that.
you know, that's, I don't think that's an intentional thing. I don't think there's any hiding anything. I don't think there's any keeping information from anybody. You know, I don't think there's anything nefarious in that aspect. I just think it becomes important. It's like you said, there's 1.5 to 2 million people racing in marble races every season, and when you have that many people, you're gonna have a preponderance of them that just don't have any idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And the folks who are very close to those folks who are in those positions of power, it would make sense why they already know. And
Right.
those are the most active members of the community. But if you want to cater to those who are not the most active members of the community, you need to start disseminating information in a coordinated manner.
Right.
I think that's A, not an easy thing to do, and B, maybe something they haven't really had the time to put a lot of effort into maybe in the past. And so, you know, I could see maybe a need arising for a little bit more of that kind of stuff. So again, that's not a negative review. It's more just like a criticism, just a positive criticism,
Right,
I
yeah.
guess, because it's not easy to do. It's not easy. You know, I'm a certified public relations officer. You know, I spent a lot of years, you know, disseminating information for governments and organizations, and it's like, it's not easy. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of efforts. And maybe it comes down to, you need somebody whose job is solely that, just to know what's going on and disseminate it to everybody else. And it's not an easy job, and it's not an easy function, to fulfill. But at some point, somebody's got to do it, because a lot of people may not know what's going on. And if you're thinking that only the people that are close to you and know what's going on, if that's sufficient, well, then you're gonna find, you know, contrary in a hurry. So
Yeah, I think.
so yeah.
And there's a couple layers to dissect there too. Again, going back to the difference between before and after is, I think before, if people wanted to get into marbles, it was pretty wide open.
Sure.
And now with so many people involved, it always feels like the doors are already closed and you have to like claw your way back in. But from that perspective, it's easy to lose sight that the people who are, you know, behind those closed doors have worked to get there for months, if not years, and have been there a very long time and have devoted themselves for a very long time and proven their worth and their trustworthiness as a member of the community to earn those privileges, if you want to call it that.
For sure.
And so I think there is an element of fairness to it, in that you kind of choose your level of involvement. But if there is going to be that kind of a structure, maybe it should be publicly addressed, or at least have a formal opinion on it. But
And you know, it's one thing for somebody like you or I to recognize, you know, the point you just made. It's another thing for somebody who's brand new to the community,
right,
who may not see that, you know, and it's important to cater to those folks as well.
Mm-hmm. I think like a clear example I could bring up, since it's kind of in the past now, is the first time they decided to make tournament signups announced, because they had filled up the schedule essentially.
Sure.
There were people who knew when the signups would be announced and people who didn't.
Right.
And in fairness to the studio, it basically boiled down to anyone who asked Enders for what time it would be, he told them. So if you wanted to know, you knew. But then there is also that bit of hurdle. It's like, well, you have to know to ask Enders, right? Like
Exactly. No, exactly.
So it's like, yes, it was open and fair, but it also required some advanced knowledge ahead of time. So,
and there's a few little ways where, you know, again, I don't think any of this is anything nefarious.
Right.
I just think
like I said, it's in total. I think Anders handled it appropriately. If someone asked him, he told him, and that's perfectly fair.
Sure.
But,
you know, there's things like when the season drops and the first day of the season, when the season's going to be launching. It's like, we all understand, and especially those that are close to the community, we understand that there are hiccups when the season drops, and then, you know, when they say the season's going to launch at noon on Wednesday, the first day of the season, you know, we most of us who understand know to expect maybe a bit of a delay.
Yep.
But it's like there weren't any announcements officially about that, except for those who knew to be in standard stream to ask about it, you know?
Right.
And even then, it was only clear as mud for a little while, you know? So little things like that. It's not that they're trying to go out of their way to do anything poorly. It's not that they're going out of their way to try and hide anything from anybody. It's just there's an element of public relations, I think, that that just sort of isn't quite there. And for somebody, you know, it didn't matter to me because I knew to expect it and I knew what was going on. It wouldn't matter to somebody like you because you know to expect it and you know where to look for the information. But if you don't know where to look for the information, you don't know who to ask, it could be a bit of an issue. And you know, that's when you're trying to draw in as many people as possible and grow a community base, those new people to the community need to be catered to, and they need to feel like they're not being left out when those types of things happen, whether it's tournament dates or the season drop or anything like that. So.
Yep. So, you know, growing pains.
Growing pain. Oh yeah, for sure. And again, I don't envy the position they're in, and it cannot be easy. And overall, they do a great job. They always have. You know, we're kind of nitpicking, but it's, you know, it's still the game that we love to play, and still I can't imagine doing something else, you know, with my stream. And a lot of us base our entire streams and our entire careers as streamers around the game, you know, and we wouldn't do that if we didn't believe in it. So
right. And you know, I got back in marbles, like my first season I started at the beginning of was season 7. Okay. And you know, it took me 5 months to find Pixel's channel.
Sure.
And it took Pixel 6 months to find my channel. And back then we had maybe 100,000 people, maybe.
Okay.
So like that's the time scale I worked at to kind of get the notoriety I have now.
Yep.
And that's not counting the year and a half of relationship building between me and Pixel. So
I can remember like the earliest times I got into marbles, you know, I can remember not having any idea what was going on like community day and having no idea. It's like one of my biggest regrets in marbles is I won on a Pixel stream one day and had no idea that I was supposed to have raced with what it was that I wanted to win, you know, and I regretted that ever since, you know. And you know, you figure it out over time, but it's just one of those deals. It's like I wish that I had known. It just, you know, these things take time. A, they take time just because that's how it is, and then B, it takes maybe some extra time because it's hard maybe it's hard to find that information a little bit, I think.
Yeah. But like that's just as a baseline, you know, like to get to where I am at now in the community took me 2 years. And for the first 6 months of that, I was nobody. So, and that was at a community 1/10 the size.
For sure.
People who want to get in now, you have to realize that's the wall you're climbing. It's not impossible, but you can't. It's not just going to happen.
Work, right? Yeah, it's supposed to take effort on your part to go out and make those connections and create those relationships and spend time with others so that, you know, they may be enticed to spend time with you. And it's a whole lot of effort, and sometimes there's a little bit of luck involved too. And there's no way around that, but you got to put in the legwork. It just, these things take time, you know, and there's so many factors that are in play, and sometimes it might seem more fair, and sometimes it may seem less fair, but it's just the growing pains of it. You got to put in the legwork one way or another.
As far as the luck goes, like if it weren't for the advances in the map builder and Tilted, I wouldn't be here.
Sure.
I wouldn't be here.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, I think we all know people who we only know through one of those two avenues, you know, and sometimes not even, you know, I have never really tilted or track builded. I've never built a single track, never uploaded one. And as far as tilts go, I'll do it just for jokes, S's and G's sometimes from time to time. So neither one of those are none of those are things that I involve with my stream or my presentation whatsoever, you know. So it's nice that there are various avenues for people to engage with the marbles community in that regard. You know, there are track builders, people that I know through track building that I would have never heard their names otherwise, you know. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. It's a good thing. Well, I think we've officially reached midstream mix-up time. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the midstream mix-up! Woo, yeah!
Oh.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Complete different direction to go here. You've been to some live concerts in your life.
I have been to some live concerts. Yes,
I've
sir.
been to some live concerts in my life.
All right.
Let's talk about that. What's
Let's do
a
it.
memorable concert moment that has stuck with you?
Oh man, let's see. Let's see. I've been to a lot of different types of concerts at different times. I think maybe the first time that I saw Tool was probably. I don't know if you've ever seen Tool, but it is an experience in and of itself. It was pretty wild. Just their light shows and their graphics and the way that just the way that their concerts go off, it was pretty wild. And so me and a buddy just traveled down on a whim to Massachusetts to see him just outside of Boston. And I can just remember being blown away. So this was right after high school. It was one of my first like big time concerts, and that was really cool for me because it was my first like real experience with a major venue with you know, professional lighting and the whole works, and just a Tool show in general is really up there on the upper echelons of bands to see live. So it was really cool for me. That was probably one of the more memorable ones. I'm not sure if it was because it was one of the first like big time shows I've been to, but it was just super memorable for me because of that, I think.
Yeah. I think I've actually been in more concerts than concerts I've gone to.
Okay. All right.
But there's a couple of things I've seen Weird Al twice.
Ooh, okay.
And I think the most traditional concert I went to was Thievery Corporation.
Okay.
I was out in Colorado. Nice, like, reggae funk group.
Yeah, yeah.
And they just had a good time. Like, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was just, you know, a bunch of people having a good time. And
yeah.
that's really all you need for a good concert.
For sure.
Now, if you want an immaculate concert, you're gonna have to do a little more. For
I can remember seeing. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the first Weird Al concert I went to. If you haven't seen it, basically he gets into costume for each song.
Right.
So he has to do costume changes between each song, and every concert tour that he does, he has to like strategize, like, how are we going to navigate the downtime of the costume changes. And
Right.
for his Alpocalypse tour, it was brilliant. He had compiled every reference to him in pop culture. So like when Jeopardy did categories all referencing him, whenever he was the joke in an episode of Friends, or, you know, it's like some sitcom makes a joke about him, or he makes a cameo appearance in something, like basically just took every pop culture reference of him there's ever been, and it was just a montage during the costume change. So it was Weird Al doing his thing in costume. He leaves the scene, and then there's a 3-screen projector smear montage of just more amazing clips that everyone knows and everyone goes crazy. And then it ends, and then the next song is already gearing up, and he comes back out. He's in a completely different costume, ready to, like, it's just, it was so well done, because it never stopped. It was song reference material, and there was no downtime. There was no like, this next song, what we're gonna do is just, no, it's just constant flow of Weird Al. It was really, really well
That's
done.
cool. That's really cool. That is really cool. Weird Al, his music's pretty neat. Just all the parodies are really, it's really funny. I was just singing the Saga Begins, the Star Wars one, just the other night. That's probably one of my favorites from Weird Al.
That's one of his bigger hits for
pretty
sure.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm a bit more into the deep cuts myself, but
okay. Yep.
And he's actually self-described it, because he has parodies and he has pastiches. And pastiches is when he parodies like a genre instead of an actual song. And those are actually more my favorite. So like Craigslist or Hardware Store or Party at the Leper Colony, stuff like that, where he's not parodying a song, but he's parodying a style, because it gives him a little more freedom to do what he wants to do. And he can incorporate
I'm not
a
sure
couple.
I've heard Craigslist. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Oh, Craigslist is so good. So good.
Yeah. No, I like Weird Al a lot. He's a funny dude.
Trying to think if there's any other concerts of note that I've been to. can't really think of any at the time.
So I can dig. For years, I was working as a firefighter in a city that did these concerts right down by water. They would do major concerts right on the waterfront, right? And I was working as a firefighter, so we were always assigned to the concerts.
Right, right.
And so whatever it was, this was in Maine, so they're big on like country music, but they had a lot of like a rock show, a metal show every summer, and then there was just a lot of everything in between. So it was like I've seen a lot of festivals down there. I've seen a lot of country shows. I saw some of the better bands that I've been introduced to live were doing those, working as an EMT at those events. I saw the first time I was introduced to a band called Avatar. I don't know if you know of Avatar.
Sounds
so they're a metal
familiar.
group, but yeah, they're a metal group out of I don't remember exactly where. So it's Europe somewhere. I think they might be Dutch. I'm not entirely sure, but regardless, their whole presentation is just, it's unbelievably impressive. They dress up like these sort of like these puppets, doing like like the marionette puppets kind of deal, and then they have like this whole presentation they put on where they're all just like standing there still right at the beginning, and then the lead singer comes out and he's waiting behind this curtain type thing, and there's this whole, it's like modeled after their music video, which sort of presents itself the same way. And then once they start playing, I mean, they go hard. They go hard. They're an awesome band.
Yeah,
and
it seems very in the vein of Marilyn Manson kind of thing.
Very much, yeah. In a lot of ways, yeah, definitely, yeah. Big on the makeup, big on the costume, and it just plays itself into the whole production. And I was just super impressed with them. And they played the second stage at one of these rock shows that I just happened to be working at. So I was super fortunate to be able to attend a lot of those, because I ran into a lot of bands that I would not have otherwise. So that's really cool.
I went to another Blue Man Group concert in New York City.
Blue Man Group. It's
that
insane. They're incredible.
They know how to like involve an audience in a show. I think that's what makes it so fun. It's just every moment there's something happening to you as the viewer, so you feel like you're actually a part of the experience.
Yeah, they'll pull people up on stage and
and even just just the way they use the space. And this is something I always thought about if I was ever doing a concert. Like when I was in high school, we did what was called a Prism concert. So, you and a group of friends practice a song, either instrumental, vocal, whatever, and you auditioned, and both the choir director and the band director kind of worked together on it, and they involved a couple big ensemble pieces too, where they took like the school's marching band or the school's chorale or whatever to do some stuff as well, and they make the whole show so that it's just this in and out experience. So they have stage shows, and obviously getting people on off stage takes time. So you have the first stage show, curtain closes, and switching everything around for the next stage show. While that's going on, the drum line walks into the back door of the auditorium and starts jamming out in the back of the auditorium. When they're done, two goofballs come in on the front lower area of the auditorium, and they do like a comedy skit or something, right? And then they go out, and then like four people come in on the other side, and they sing like a chorale or something, and they go out. And then by the time that's all finished, the next big group is ready on the stage opens, they do the big performance, close the curtains, and then so it's just constantly different things happening everywhere.
Sure.
And Blue Man Group kind of ties into that too, is like at one point they just start walking on the backs of chairs like across the audience like while they're doing the song. Like it's just like involving you in it, or they're just shooting random materials at you, whether it's confetti or goo or whatever, right? So just like
the first few rows have ponchos on the chairs when you get there.
So just like always involving the audience and really using the space of the concert. That's something I always would prioritize if I ever did an event myself as a director, is I would always want to use all of the space to make it really work. So.
Yeah, and it gives a level of uniqueness to it that is a lot different than just a normal musical act. Blue Man Group's incredible. It's incredible the way they do all that, and it's a bunch of guys that don't say a word the whole show, just painted blue, and they have the backing band and everything, but they're all pretty talented musicians themselves too. The actual Blue Men, and they have like the pipe, drums and all that kind of stuff. But then they're doing just weird, unique, off the wall talents in between it too. They do the marshmallow thing, they're chucking marshmallows into each other. Yeah, it's just wild things like that. It's really impressive. Yeah, I saw a Blue Man Group in Boston years and years ago, and I was blown away by it, and
Yeah.
I would go see them whenever. As I could watch them every night live. It's incredible. The act, it's so unique. There's not a whole lot like it out there.
Good stuff. Well, I think that's a successful midstream mix-up.
Hey, hey.
GG, we did it. I don't even remember what we
Hey.
talked about for the last hour.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
All right, sir. Well, with about 55 minutes remaining, more or less, why don't you take the reins on this old puppy? Give it a
All right.
tour around. See what you got.
Sure. Let's see. I mean, we went through a couple of my questions, but I got a few more here. Let's see. As far as Shens, the streamer, do you see yourself continuing to be the type of streamer that you are currently? Do you think there's utility in marbles and your presentation and your sort of your side acts that you do currently, or do you see a need to branch out in terms of marketability or growth, or growing stagnant, or where do you see yourself going?
Right. It's definitely only a stepping stone. I have very long-term plans and very grandiose plans, most of which make no sense to most people, which is why I never talk about it.
Sure.
But this is something actually I don't think Pixel was ready for the answer for, because when I had him on the show, he asked like what I wanted to do with my stream. I was like, well, I hope I get large enough to not be able to stick with marbles anymore. Like I wanna grow beyond marbles.
Sure.
And he was kind of taken aback by that. I think he took it as like something he was doing wrong. Like, what is marbles not providing for your show? It's like, well, it's not that. It's just
Right.
like there's more to life than marbles.
For sure.
Like
Go
there's
figure.
music, there's theater, there's storytelling, there's all sorts of stuff to do. But really, right now, it's just about getting my chops, making sure I can handle myself in public eye and on camera, stuff like that. Building an audience, getting the tempo, getting the endurance, all that stuff. It's just like it's like working up to the Olympics. You got to start somewhere. You're not going to win gold medal first year. You got to build up. So that's kind of how I view marbles. It's my training grounds for what I want to actually do.
You think that the audience you build and the viewership and the support base you're building through Marbles community could translate into other areas, or do you think that might be a
healthy
challenge
portion
stepping away from it? Okay. Yep.
And I'm a big numbers guy, and in all honesty, even if I get to the point I want to be at, even if only 10% carry over, that's got to be plenty to build a further community in a larger pond, as it were. So
Sure.
I don't need everyone to carry over. I would appreciate everyone carrying over, and I think a lot.
Of course.
I think a lot would. But as far as numbers go, I wouldn't need retention beyond 10% if all goes well. But I would expect, half. I wouldn't be surprised if half of them stuck around. I think I have a bit more. I think that's why a lot of people come to my stream, because with my in-depth knowledge of the marbles game as itself, I'm able to do things other people aren't able to do, which allows me to put on a show. Like, I'm not competing in the grind. I'm not worrying about what my maps are getting rated. I'm not. Well, I am competing in Tilted, but really I'm more like teaching Tilted, right?
Sure.
I'm trying to bring
you
attention
tell
to
you're just
it.
kind of zipping
Like-
along. Yeah.
Like I have to stay, in the top 3 on the leaderboard to keep my reputation up, so that people will actually respect the things I'm saying. But,
Right.
it's. So I think that's why people come, is they realize that there's a way to gain knowledge about the game to unlock the ability to do things others can't do. And I don't think they're strictly attracted to what's been unlocked in marbles so much as the ability to unlock those things in the first place. And I think Record Hunters is a prime example of that, because Bax and I always joke, like, Record Hunters is our best racing streams we do. Like, whenever we're doing races, our highest viewer count is always on Record Hunters. And that is the worst racing stream on Twitch, period. We do the same map over and over again. We take like 10 minutes between each attempt. Like, it is the worst racing stream in all of Marbles, but it's the highest viewed racing stream of both of our channels, which is just hilarious.
That tells you there's something going on there.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's the point. It's because we have that knowledge base. we don't like we don't need the game. We are using the game, not us hiding behind the game or on the coattails of the game. So
it's like you said, there becomes a point, right, where those that have been there for some time watching you. It's like they're there to watch you, and they kind of already at that point know what you're about, what's going on with you, and whatever you decide to do, it's like they're gonna follow along,
right?
You know, and like you said, at least a percentage, you know.
Yeah.
Hopefully all, but at least a percentage.
Right. And that's probably going to be the biggest trick, right? Is especially with marbles, I would very readily say of the non-developers, I probably have one of the highest amounts of knowledge of the game, like in-depth knowledge of the game, of how it works and what it is. So I would need that kind of command in whatever other avenue I go down, whether it was music or theater or whatever. Like, I would still need to be able to provide that level of manipulation and creativity to those other avenues I go down in order to retain that kind of an audience. So that's probably the biggest challenge.
It's like part knowledge base, part knowing how to execute on it kind of deal. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, I'll move on here. I think that why don't you tell me a little bit about your hair care routine?
Hair care routine.
You know, yeah. How about like the stash and the beard? Like, how long have you been at that? How much time, you know, per day do you put into all of it? Does it ever get irritating? And have you ever just wanted to do away with it, just hack it all off?
I want to change it more than I want to remove it. I've been definitely contemplating going back to my little like closely shaved chin strap kind of thing that I had for a while. Just because I like the look of it better, but I'm giving this a fair go, seeing what happens with it. I don't know yet.
Sure.
I gotta play around with it. But routine's not that drastic. The actual hair, I probably only shampoo like twice a week. Other than that, I take a lot of baths. So the soap in the bath usually gets any grunge out, and then I just rinse with a quick like 30-second shower at the end to get everything out.
And it's bad to be putting stuff into your hair all the time anyway, right? You're supposed to leave it alone as much as possible.
You need the natural oils. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's not too much upkeep that goes into it. But the initial growing out of the mustache, I think, was probably like 4 months, maybe 5.
Okay.
Didn't take long. Everything grows very fast. My nails grow fast. My hair grows fast. Everything grows fast. So I do have that advantage.
Kind of the same way. My facial hair grows stupid fast. Yeah. I was fortunate like that because I only had a month to grow it out before I started styling it. It's like a month into it, I'm noticing, the thicker it becomes, a little bit easier it is to sort of style. But then it's also like, I don't, I guess I set aside probably 20 minutes per day before streams to really style it up and get some wax into it and get it looking, at least somewhat presentable. But
fair enough.
I don't know how much longer I could do that.
Right.
So I don't know if it's the life for me. But
it's my full, like, not counting the time in the bath. Like, if I have to shave, maybe it's about 10 minutes doing everything.
Okay.
Not shaving, maybe 5 minutes, 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Doesn't take long.
Get it down to a science.
It's an efficient process. Also, I don't have a lot of hair. Most people don't realize. Like, the thing I hate is when they grow it past their crease line and they call it a mustache.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's the Guinness World Record for the longest mustache, but it's his cheek hair. You can clearly see it's like his cheek hair, not his actual hair. And it's impressive how long it is. Don't get me wrong, but
a little disingenuous.
If it's hair that's coming from here, this is not a mustache. The mustache stops at the crease of the mouth. So,
good point.
And for me, unfortunately, my hair grows very weirdly. So, like, past a certain point, it just starts growing that way.
Okay.
Whereas this hair kind of grows straight down. So in order to train this up, if this hair is growing straight out, it actually pulls it down, and it just doesn't work. So I have to actually keep it kind of close to the center. So it's technically an overgrown Hitler mustache, which,
fair enough.
I think it's time for redemption, right? We can bring it back and rebrand it.
Somebody's got to turn it
around.
We
got to rebrand it. We got to bring it back and rebrand it. So.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I think one of the only reasons I was actually willing to go forward with, a different hairstyle for me is I spent I spent more than a decade working as a firefighter. As a
Right.
firefighter, you can't have a lot of
Utility over
facial hair.
style.
You can't do it. And
Yeah.
so it was new for me to even have the ability to grow hair on my face, or
Right.
especially my beard, because that's a no-no in the fire world. So it's been kind of neat for me, but it's so new, and I'm just so not used to it that it's a culture shock for me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess very different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. Let's see. The next question I had here was, I hear that you're quite the connoisseur when it comes to alcohols, and I am very much not. Like,
Oh,
not at all. Not even a little
it's a
bit.
little.
So,
I would have taken you at least for like a Southern Comfort or like a Crown Royal kind of guy, maybe.
yes to both. Yes to
Okay, all
both.
right.
But
So I wasn't off. That's
I'm
good.
yeah.
Good.
I mean, but it's more like a yes to whatever kind of deal at the same
Gotcha.
time too.
Gotcha.
So I guess my question was, if you take somebody like me who's very much not,
Hmm.
not advanced on the alcohol palette, it's like, where would somebody like me start to advance that? Where would somebody like
Hmm.
me start? Like, where would I? What should I get first, and what should I step up to, and how
All right,
should
well,
I
the
play
first
that?
question is why do you drink?
I guess it depends on the situation. It depends on the situations. Like, I don't find myself really just drinking to get drunk a whole lot. It's
Hmm.
usually like I'm in a social
So
situation.
you're a
I'm
social drinker.
around social drink.
Social drinker.
Yes.
So you want a drink that's going to make you social. So for
Yes.
me, I can't drink wine socially. I would
Okay.
just fall asleep. I would just pass out right
Okay.
on the couch, just half a bottle of wine, taking a nap. I fucking need some sleep. Goodbye. Right?
Fair enough.
So wine, I don't drink socially. However, I love wine. Right? So um, I think as far as social drinking goes, usually hard liquors are good, or
Okay.
mixed drinks especially, but they're not as easy to do depending on where you're at. So like if you're at someone's house, mixed drinks aren't always easy to go by, but if you're at a bar, definitely always go for mixed drinks.
Right. Right.
And once you kind of find which mixed drinks you navigate toward, you'll see common ingredients among those. Like, oh, all the mixed drinks I like have gin in them. Maybe I'll try a straight up, gin martini. See if I like it. Oh, that's actually
Okay.
not too bad. It's a little too pickly. And then it's like, oh well, Hendrix exists where you can use cucumber instead of olive, and it's actually
Okay.
much smoother gin. You might actually like it. And then you try it, like, oh yeah, no, this is fantastic. Definitely worth the $70 a bottle.
Okay. See, like
So
the extent to my so I'm like my thought process, and tell me if I'm way off here, is
mhm.
like the more expensive the liquor, the better my hangover is gonna be. And
It can be,
it's
yes. So
okay.
um, there's a couple factors at play. One, so let's just talk vodka. Vodka is the most easiest one to explain.
Okay.
Um, you may have seen the MythBusters episode where like they use water filters to purify
Yes.
vodka and make it higher
Yep.
quality, right? And that's a part of it. So purity is a big part of how you feel, both while drinking it and after you've drunk it. But then there's always the concept of just hydration. You know, you are dehydrated to the point of having a hangover, which is
Right.
relatively unhealthy.
Right.
You've poisoned your body for 8 hours, and your body is now recovering. So those are the two factors to kind of play into that as far as hangovers go. So price makes sense to the point of quality, but not to the sense of preference. So
Okay.
no one prefers a $70 bottle of gin to a $30 bottle of gin. That's that's not how it works. Some people like the
Sure.
70, some people like the 30.
Gotcha.
And if you like the 30, congratulations, you lucked out. Because, the scotches I like cost $150. And it's like, well, we're not drinking that every day.
Yeah.
Right? So there is that
It's like,
blend.
what's the factor? What's the factor that would drive somebody to, without thinking too much about it, spend $150 on a bottle compared to something comparable that's much cheaper?
Right. So
Or
that
is there something that sets it apart?
that goes into that social drinking, right? So I would probably never drink a $150 bottle of scotch by myself. I would
Okay.
want to share that with people so that we could
Okay.
share the experience of a very finely, elegantly crafted bottle of liquor that
Sure.
we can take time to analyze and discuss our differences opinion on and converse about.
Right.
So that's kind of where I would treat price in that aspect. But I just generally I just would not pay attention to price. I think the function and what your tastes are more important,
Sure.
and you'll find where your prices lie once you get there. So
Okay.
that's my advice.
Like
I would say
I find
start
myself drinking like whiskey quite a bit, and
right.
you know, a few of my uncles, you know, they're big into Jack Daniels, so they drink a lot of Jack Daniels. But when there's a special occasion, they'll bust out the single barrel, you know, the
Yep.
nice bottle of Jack Daniels, and that, you know, it's I find it tastes a little bit better. And it's a
Right.
lot more expensive, you
Right.
know, and
Right.
so I guess that makes sense. But
So
that was sort of like the extent of my my
yeah,
knowledge there.
there's definitely an element of purity, which is probably the biggest markup of price, is just
Okay.
what it took to produce it. But then there's also just the batch size, right? So, um, there's a lot of beers that are great that are cheap because they make, 2,000 gallons at a time.
Right.
And then, there's a scotch that might not be as good that costs $60 a bottle because they only make 500 a year because it's just,
Sure.
four people in a shack doing their thing, right? So there's a lot of different factors that go into price. And that's kind of what I'm trying to point out is like using price as a metric. There's too many variables behind the price.
Fair enough.
So the price alone isn't going to tell you anything. So I would say if you like whiskey now, start
Yep.
going into some more whiskey mixed drinks, like a rye Manhattan you could try
Okay.
instead of a whiskey Manhattan. Or instead of a whiskey sour, how about like an amaretto sour?
Okay.
Start seeing some mixed drinks that are close but not quite to whiskey, and see what you like, what you don't like. Keep going down those paths, and if you start seeing a commonality between your decisions that are not whiskey based, then you might have a different direction to head down, and you can start exploring those a little more.
Yep. Good call. Good call. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. Typically, I'm just whatever's handy, whatever
I
somebody
would also
picked
like to
up.
just point out that it's not just alcohol; it's everything.
Sure. Fair
Everything.
enough. Yep. Good point. So
I
I guess, kind of piggybacking on that, favorite foods.
favorite foods. Ooh, see, I had a question. My thing was, what was your favorite thing to cook? So I have to ask
Ooh.
for clarification. Favorite thing to eat, favorite thing to cook. Those are two entirely different
Two
experiences.
entirely different questions. Yeah. Let's see. I am not much of a cook. All right.
Mm.
So I resort to simple. So like that's where my head goes. My
Okay.
head goes to what's easiest.
Let me
What's easiest, what's simplest, what'll be done the quickest.
let me paint a situation here for you though.
Okay.
Um, you're, I assume you are a straight man. Is that a fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Affirmative.
So, suppose you are courting a female fellow,
Mhm.
and you invite them over to dinner. What you cooking? Or would you just never do that?
I could probably whip up like a steak. I could probably do a
All right,
steak
yeah.
and have it come out okay. Because that's it's simple, it's straightforward.
Right.
But you can throw on whatever you want for fixins, and you can make the plate look nice.
Mhm.
And so like I'd go to the store, I'd grab a nice cut of steak. So
Mhm.
whatever looked pretty good. The expensive steak at the grocery store or whatever. And
Mhm.
then I would try my damnedest to cook it to the ladies liking. So
Fair enough.
I'm a well done guy, so I like everything well done, whether it's
Ooh.
burgers or steak or
Ooh.
whatever. And I
Ooh.
take a lot of flack for that.
Ooh. You
It
sure
sounds like I'm
do.
about to.
Rightly so.
But as far when it comes to cooking, I could be a little bit more particular about it, and
Right.
I could also deal with. I just don't like a whole lot. I don't like it mooing. I don't like a
Right.
whole lot of like
That's fine.
too much pink, not a lot of blood. But if it's like medium well, somewhere there or beyond, I'm okay with it. I don't. It doesn't necessarily need to be burned for me to eat it.
Right. Fair enough.
But yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, I think I'd probably pick steak to cook,
Okay.
and then to eat. That's a good question too. Again, I'm just I'm a simple dude. I'll go for like the pizzas or the pastas or something. I'm not too fancy about it. Those are my favorite things to eat. It's comfort foods for me.
Right. I mean, for me personally, I'm all about expanding my palate. So
Okay.
I'll always try something I haven't tried before. One of the best things I ever had is at an Italian restaurant on a Jersey boardwalk. Um, Osterio is the name. I think I still have the Matchbox. I can look it up if I need to, but I believe it's Osterio. Okay. They did a grilled octopus.
Ooh.
But what they did is they dunked it in bacon fat before grilling it. So like dunk it in the bacon fat, put it on the grill.
Okay.
And like it doesn't need sauce, it doesn't need butter, it doesn't need anything. You can just, it was served on pasta and it had, fixings and everything, but like it did not need anything. Just octopus, bacon fat, grill. Ooh, that was a pleasant surprise.
Okay.
I did not know octopus could be so good. Because, like, I'll eat calamari, but I'm not the biggest fan because it's usually just, chewy blah.
Yeah. But texture's big with me.
But that was a big wake-up call to cephalopods in my book. Was just like, this is what it can be like. Delicious. I'm bored. So that's just something. And again, it's not like that is my all-time favorite, but I'm always looking to expand my palate, so I could rattle off 20 different things that I could describe as one of my favorite things I've ever had. Sure. Thai food, actually, always a place in my heart, right up there with Japanese. Okay. There's a very nice Thai restaurant in New Jersey that does bluefish wrapped in a banana leaf. And then they serve that on top of the classic Thai stir fry. And that, it's magical.
Magical. All right.
Magical.
Quite an endorsement. Okay.
Yeah. So it's always surprising stuff. Stuff is like, wow, I didn't realize that made a difference, but it does. Right? Like, how much difference could it make to wrap something in a banana leaf when you throw it?
Who'd have thunk it, right?
Apparently, it changes everything.
Yeah. So it's like my big issue is I was the pickiest eater in the world growing up as a kid, but since for the past few years, I have found it has dawned on me that I like a lot more and am enjoying trying a lot more new things than I ever did my entire life, and I just grew out of the pickiness all of a sudden. So I'm kind of at this point where I'm like branching out and trying to try a lot more new things as often as I can without having the experience of sort of refining that throughout most of my young adult life. So I'm like, I don't even really know where to start with a lot of this stuff. So it's kind of a whole new world for me. So I'm branching out into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cooking for me. My mom's like the big baker in the family, so I do a good amount of baking. But as long as she's around, I don't really have a job. So
Yep.
I'm like in the reserves. It's just like I'm the next generation. I gotta wait my turn. But I lived with a Korean friend for a year. Okay. And, being a Japanese and Thai food enthusiast, I was always doing stir fries and stuff. And he showed me some unique elements to Korean food, like the fermented black bean paste and how you season the chicken and stuff like that. And I've adopted a lot of that into my stir fry cooking lately. So I definitely like doing Eastern cuisine for sure, as far as cooking goes. But every once in a while, an old traditional 1,000-year-old European recipe, pork shoulder with black pepper, mustard, honey, salt, all that good stuff. Let it sit for 6 hours till it's just falling apart, and make a nice rotkohl and some spätzle on the side or whatever.
Orange juice. An orange juice marinade for chicken, and it's freaking delicious.
That sounds delicious. Good. I mean, orange chicken #1 from Panda Express. So
there we go.
Not far off.
There we go. That's good stuff. Yeah, I gotta work on. My.
What was the other thing I was thinking of with that? So a really good marinade trick if you want something to try. This is something I learned from my uncle lives in Texas, so he does like the Tex-Mex stuff and the Cajun stuff. He's not far from Louisiana. And one of the tricks he showed us, if you ever want to do like some roast pork or pulled pork, instead of using water or tomato sauce or whatever, use root beer.
Root beer, okay.
Root beer or like a nice birch beer. Are you a birch beer fan?
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah,
great
if you can
birch
get like a
beer right
nice
around here.
strong red birch beer
Okay.
and put that in, fantastic.
Okay. Noted. Literally noted. I got it written down. I'll have to do that. Well, all right. Anything else food related you want to throw in here before I move on?
That was all the only question I had on the food front. I knew it would be an explosive topic, so I knew it didn't need to get too
It
specific.
always is.
Just bring us food. It'll go somewhere.
How about pineapple on pizza then? Let's go ahead and throw it out there. No?
Nope.
Hard no? All right,
Yep.
perfect.
My family
All right,
half of my family comes from the northern hills of Italy and not far from Napoli, where
sure
pizza is done and done right. Did you ever see the viral video, by the way? There's a guy who goes around Naples and when they order pizza, he'll bring them a pineapple on pizza instead. And he records the reactions. So good. He gets death threats. Old ladies are chasing him down the stairs with their slippers. Like, it's just, they're like slapping the box out of his hands and throwing it, just like, so good.
Beautiful.
So good. Now,
I have not seen the video, but I'm going to have to.
If you like pineapple on pizza, go right ahead. But
I'm not a fan.
It's just
I'm not a fan, but there just seems to be there's the following, there's the cult following, pineapple on pizza crowd, and I don't get it. I don't like it. I don't even like having it on there and scraping it off, because it's got that aftertaste, and I'm not about that life.
Like, what other citrus do you put on pizza? None.
It's a great question.
None. You want lemon on your pizza? Do you want orange on your pizza?
You want some... Exactly. There's probably people out there, right? Orange on pizza.
You want some bergamot? Would you like some bergamot oil on your pizza?
Well, good. I'm glad we agree on that. I'm glad we agree on that.
It's just unnecessary. Like, if you like it, you like it, but it's unnecessary. Like, come on, you're not gonna say it's better than pepperoni. Like, no,
you'd be hard pressed.
You're not gonna beat pepperoni.
I don't understand it.
You're not. I don't understand it.
How about weird things in like ramen noodles? How about like ranch sauce in ramen noodles?
Let me see if I have. You should, because we were talking about cooking earlier. Hold on, are you ready? Guys, you might want to fill time here while I dig up this picture.
All right.
Could take me a second. What's something weird you've seen in ramen or like in ramen?
Well, I guess that's the weirdest thing. Is like I'm perfectly fine with ramen noodles, always have been, but then minty condition has been trying to get me, or had been trying to get me for the longest time, to put some ranch sauce in some freaking ramen noodles, and I thought it was the weirdest thing. And then one day on a whim, I just kind of did it, and I hate to even admit that it wasn't all that bad. In fact, it was edible, and I ate it, and I'm not gonna go as far as to say I enjoyed it immensely. But it wasn't the worst thing I ever tasted, and that's as much of an endorsement as I'll give for it.
Fair enough.
She finds great enjoyment out of the fact that I tried it and didn't hate it. So it was what it was, and now she keeps trying to get me to try weirder and weirder things by my standards, and it all started with ranch and ramen, which I thought was blasphemous the first time I heard it.
Makes sense. All right. Well, I got some things I can show up here, so let me do this real quick. Right. I guess I'll just add a window capture. Put it over my face.
You can stick it over my mug. It's all good.
There we go. That works. Boom. Look at that. So
this
is I have opinions about tofu, by the way.
Okay.
Don't try to make tofu taste like something else. How dare you? Don't do it.
Okay.
Just don't.
Yeah, fair point.
Don't do it. Tofu, if done properly, is fine. I use sage and thyme, butter in the pan, brown it on one side, flip it over, brown it on the other side, done. You don't need to do anything else to tofu to make it delicious.
Okay.
There's also rotisserie chicken on the bottom there. Glass noodles, which is what you see in the middle, with leeks, which is the pile of white bottom right. And then we've got some carrot sticks, soft-boiled egg, and those are Thai basil leaves and cilantro leaves in there as well. So
Okay.
that's one rendition. Rendition number 2. This is a roasted asparagus, and then this is with carrots, turnips, and rutabagas, and then some lovely side Asian salads. That's goji berries, red onion, spinach, and daikon radish, which is a pretty good one there. I like that one.
It looks tasty. It looks tasty.
It does,
See, I would be all over. Like, I'm not sure that I've ever had that combination of foods before, but
Right,
looks,
that's the
looks
thing
tasty.
of the experimenting. So, like,
Right.
asparagus, roasted asparagus, you'd be like, that doesn't go in soup. No, it does.
Okay.
It does.
I do like asparagus. We were just having a conversation about that on my stream the other night. And a lot of people were not fans of asparagus, but I like it.
Now, this one was my favorite. So, this is the actual ramen noodle, and rotisserie chicken on top. Now, the red stuff is seaweed. It's a very strong seaweed. I'm trying to remember which one it is. I can't remember which one it is specifically.
Okay.
And then this has the basic carrots, cilantro, Thai basil in it as well. But the seaweed in ramen, delicious. If you get the right
Pretty
stuff.
good?
You want it really strong.
Okay.
And you want it dried.
Okay.
That's what you want for your seaweed. So
I've only had like an experience or two with being made to try seaweed, and it was always it was interesting. It was just pretty bland the first time that I had it, but I guess it's super good for you, right?
have you ever had
All
seaweed
sorts of,
salad, like at a sushi restaurant?
No, I haven't. No, I
Try
haven't.
that. So that's
Okay.
a raw seaweed, so it's gonna be like a little weird to chew. It's kind of tough
Right.
and spongy, but they usually do it with a sesame seed oil and a couple other things
Okay.
in there. And if you like that, that'll kind of open up the world of seaweed to you. But
Okay.
if you're just not overall a seaweed fan, then that'll tell you if you actually like seaweed or not. Is if you like seaweed
Okay.
salad.
Yeah, no, I was at a buddy's house years ago, and his mom was like, "Yeah, I'm making like a seaweed salad," and I was like, "Really, seaweed?" And she was like, "No, seriously, try some. Just try some." And I put it in my mouth. It was like you said, it was a little bit spongy, a little bit like not a whole lot to it. But then I was reading up on a little bit and was pretty interested to find out that it's like it has all sorts of nutritional properties that you just can't get anywhere else. So it's good for you. I'm all about that.
Good stuff.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna have to try that out. I saw a meme the other day that it was a slice of bread with a little bit of peanut butter on it, a little bit of jelly, and then a bunch of thyme over on the right side. And the meme was it's peanut butter jelly time.
Ah, okay. I get it. I get it. Well, I got a question I could throw your way if you want.
Yeah. Knock yourself out.
It's a double categorical question.
Okay.
Artists who you feel deserve more attention, and streamers
Okay.
who you feel deserve more attention.
Ooh,
And the seaweed, by the way, was dulce. D-U-L-S-E.
say that again.
D-U-L-S-E. Dulce. Or dulce.
Dulce.
You could try kombu, but kombu's a little tougher. But dulce,
Okay.
dulce is nice.
Got it. Noted. All right. To get to your question, let's see here. Artists who I feel deserve some more attention. That's tough for me. Maybe I'll kill two birds with one stone, and I'll throw a name out there that's an artist and a streamer that gets quite a bit of attention that isn't necessarily super mega huge, but maybe. I watched this guy Harry Mack, he's a freestyle rapper. Okay. And may very well be, without any exaggeration, the best freestyle rapper, legitimate freestyle rapper, maybe in the world, And he just recently got into Twitch. He's already has some fame through YouTube. He used to walk around like California boardwalks and just kind of freestyle rap.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to crowds, and would draw crowds like that. And then he's been on a few high profile like radio shows and performed for some big names out there. And now he also streams on Twitch a few times a week. And his following is growing pretty quickly. He'll average somewhere 6,000-8,000 viewers.
That's good.
For most of his streams. Yeah, it's pretty good. And it keeps growing all the time. So it's only going to be a matter of time before he's got quite an immense following.
Right.
But I think he's he's probably one of the most underrated artists slash streamers that I know or that I can think of off the top of my head right away. And then specifically streamers. I mean, we all know some pretty incredible streamers personally, right? That could are very deserving of
Oh yeah.
all sorts of recognition. So I'm hesitant to sort of throw specific names out there, but there's a lot of them. I think I know a lot personally. As far as like streamers that I don't know personally that aren't so well known, I'm having trouble pinpointing and putting my finger on any specifically. But yeah, I think Harry Mack is an immensely underrated artist slash streamer. So I think that answers both questions a little bit.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
How about you?
Um, I'm always trying to find artists that I like. I think Jorana, she's a French Canadian cellist singer.
Okay.
She probably deserves a lot more attention. She could probably give Billie Eilish a run for her money, honestly.
Ooh.
She's
okay.
She's that kind of avenue, like very internal, emotional, very provoking music kind of a thing, and ability to play with sound, play with harmonies, stuff like that. So it's kind of what I would throw out there. It's Jorane, I think. But as far as streamers, I mean, CC Kiddison. Every time I learn about CC Kiddison, I'm always surprised. Like, he's been in Marbles how long? He's been streaming how long?
I can remember. Yeah.
He's been doing this for how long? He did that for 30 years. Like every time I learn something about CC Kiddison, I'm impressed.
Okay.
And I feel like he probably deserves some more attention.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. Going back to the Harry Mack thing, it has been a bit of a revolution, or at least a renaissance for music streamers on Twitch.
Big time.
Any thoughts or insights on that particular phenomena?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that it took this long to see such a wave
pandemic,
of
essentially.
It literally took a pandemic, which is crazy to me because it's the platform was perfect for those types of artists prior to the pandemic, and it was like you see all sorts of artists popping up and making more of a name for themselves and making a boatload of money on the platform, and it's like where were you guys like before this? Whether it's people like Harry Mack or people like who's that guitarist for Dragon Force?
I was gonna say the
Herman Lee. Herman Lee, yeah,
Herman Lee.
And there's all kinds of them, and it's a perfect platform because it's not like you need to have this big mega production in front of 10,000 people, in a stadium somewhere to perform live for people. And you could do it right at home in the comfort of your own home, or with other performers, with a whole band. There are whole bands that perform live on Twitch, and it blows my mind that it took something like a pandemic for there to be this big sweeping wave of musicians that are making names for themselves, whether they had a big name for themselves before or not. It was weird to me. It was weird to me to not have seen that prior to everyone being stuck at home during the pandemic, and to see such a wave of them now. It was like, where was that? And it's not just people performing their music live. It's like musicians that are making names for themselves based on the name they made for themselves in their career. You take like T-Pain. A lot of rappers are now streaming live on Twitch. Playing games on Twitch and making little side gigs for themselves, being gamers and game streamers on Twitch also. So it was peculiar for me to see that not happen so much until now. Just very weird, very very weird. Yeah. But yeah, I noticed the same thing. It stood right out. It stands right out. It's just fascinating.
Yep.
DJs are making big. It's
prior
it's a
to
perfect
this
platform for something like that.
Prior to this, the one I always saw that seemed like it would gain more popularity but never did was people who just kind of play keyboard or piano. Right, and that like people would chime in with requests or occasions, and they would just kind of spontaneously come up with something for the request of the occasion. And like I just adopted a puppy. Can I get a song? And they like make a puppy, like a new puppy song or something, like right there on the spot. Like, and they're chatting with music essentially.
For sure.
Using their art to carry the conversation. And I feel like there's something there to that kind of idea.
Yeah, clearly, right? You know, and you're seeing more and more people that are sort of doing a little bit more of that type of stuff, especially something like a keyboard, like a pianist. It's a little bit more simple than it is for a different type of musician because all you need is a keyboard, you know, with some specific wiring and a little bit of mixer software to make it sound, you know, as close to professional quality as anybody could, you know. So, you know, a halfway decent microphone, a halfway decent mixer, and a keyboard with some wires, and you can do everything you would do, you know, for a professional presentation or a concert, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, like you said, it's shocking that it's taken everybody needing to resort to finding something else to do during a pandemic for that to sort of emerge
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as a whole category in and of itself, in and amongst Twitch and elsewhere, you know, all
Yeah.
the platforms. It's happening all over the place. It was interesting. It was interesting to see that happen.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Really
Any
good
other
stuff.
questions you got left on your
No,
list?
the other one that I had on my list here was just your thoughts about Twitch as a platform in general. Twitch the
Mm.
platform. It's like, are you worried at all about its future? Are you worried about yours as a streamer in the platform? Like, do you think it's a good idea for creators to be branching out into other platforms, or do you think it's more pertinent for them to hone their skills, you know, on Twitch before branching out? Like, where do you see
Right.
all that going?
For me personally, the attitude is I'm selling, not buying. So you're not gonna put something on the table that I'm gonna change my stream for.
Sure.
Either you're buying what I'm selling or I'm not interested.
Right.
So if that if Twitch ends up buying, I might sell. If someone else offers to buy, I might sell. As long as
Right.
it's the right interaction. Um,
Makes sense.
Twitch as a whole, as I've been looking at a lot of like behind in-depth insight from people who actually like
Sure.
know things about Twitch beyond the surface. And really since the Amazon buy, they're really just another like the way Amazon views its business is it's all about Amazon Prime subscriptions. So any company buyout they do, any promotion deal they do, the only direction is to drive Amazon Prime. So if Twitch wants to become bigger than what it is, um, it needs to convince Amazon to invest more money than just Amazon Prime.
Sure.
And that's hard to do because Google is doing YouTube streaming now,
Right.
and you're not going to convince Amazon to invest, $500 million in developing an algorithm supercomputer that can do what YouTube can already do.
For sure.
So that's not going to happen. So
Right.
advertising and stuff like that is going to be very hard to make effective on the platform. So they might have to try to find a way that's not advertising to do it. But like I said, the people who know that any non-advertising monetary business model is linear, whereas
Sure.
advertising is exponential, right? Because a person can only subscribe to a channel, but an ad can be played to everyone watching that channel,
Sure.
right? So
I guess where it's difficult for Twitch is, you know,
yeah, they're in a tough
they can only
spot.
do.
The
They're in a very
direction,
tough
the
spot. You know.
direction that gives them the money to make the platform better is already being done better by other competitors,
Correct.
and any
And
other
then it takes the
direction,
incentive away from the
right?
individuals to
And
do
any other
so, to take
direction
part in
isn't
it.
going to give them the money they need to make the platform better. So
Right.
what do? They gotta talk to Big Daddy. Say, hey, they gotta find
Yeah.
some angle to open up to lighten up the grip on that wallet in the pocket.
For sure. And yet, despite all of that, you're still seeing quarterly growth at quite the
Right.
magnitude on Twitch. You're seeing still huge influxes of new accounts being created all the time, and it seems like the hours watched is going up all the time, despite some of these. There have been some exoduses from, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I just read something about a pretty fairly large group of partners sort of hitting the road as far as Twitch goes, and
Yep.
I keep reading stories about that, and yet they're still growing. Yet there's still the hours watched are still going up, the money spent is still going up. So it's like six in one hand, half dozen in the other. It's like I think a lot of people are blowing the whistle and sounding the alarm because a lot of high profile names are leaving. It started a year ago, whatever, with Shrouds, the Ninjas of the world,
Yep.
took off to new platforms. But that seemed like sensible business moves for those individuals more so than an issue on the platform's end.
Right.
And so I don't think I'm too concerned about the future as a platform of Twitch, but there are some, like anything, there's some interesting moves being made and there's some interesting concerns being raised. But as long as the platform is growing and there's money coming in and there's hours being watched and the base is still there, I don't think there's too much of a cause for concern.
So there's been a lot of speculation as to the genius behind the ninja move. Do you know about it?
Not too much. No.
So it's most likely on the manager, not on Ninja, or
Okay.
whoever works up the contracts was
Right.
really looking out for Ninja in that situation.
Sure.
They
Wouldn't be surprising at all.
probably knew Mixer wasn't going to be around as long as the contract for Ninja was. And if they sold or closed the platform, they would default on the contract and they would owe Ninja all the money.
Better buy them out, right?
And then, with Mixer gone, Twitch has to renegotiate to get Ninja back.
Okay.
And if Ninja just says straight up no, then Twitch has to start a brand new contract. So Ninja gets a triple payout. Gets the payout from leaving Twitch, gets the payout from the default on Mixer, and gets the next contract with wherever they go. With
Okay.
no,
Then he has no stress.
no
It doesn't matter what
commitment,
happens.
no
with his-
tie down,
okay.
no nothing. Free agent. Like, it was stupid. Brilliant move on
Good
whoever.
business. Good business. Yeah.
Yeah, so-
I mean, you can't
But
really.
that's
It's
kind
a
of
whole different ball game at that level.
Right, and let's say like that's not a reflection on Twitch. That's an individual in a very unique position, capitalizing on their opportunity, and you can't look at it as more than that.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's what accounts for a lot of the alarms being raised in and amongst various communities and circles and the media outlets that talk about these types of platforms, is that they see something like that and they equate it to, well, if names like Ninja don't want to be on this platform anymore, there must be something to it. And I think like you said, it's more likely just a business move on their part, because they're talking about millions of dollars a year in their incomes and things like that. So it's just a whole different ball game. So no, I agree with you.
And to be honest, every time I hear of a high profile Twitch streamer that's in trouble with Twitch, I usually don't like those streamers. So it just seems to me like most people that are falling out with Twitch don't really fit the platform anyway, in my opinion. So I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, it's a good point. And then, there's a few others I think that are doing their best to capitalize on it as a PR marketing type move, as opposed to there being an issue with the platform. It's like you take the Dr. Disrespects of the world. It seems like it was advantageous for him to play that up the way that he would anyway about anything, and then turn it into a money grab and a business move, which I think makes a lot of sense and doesn't necessarily equate to any sort of an issue with the platform. So I think I'm in agreement with you. I'm pretty comfortable with the place Twitch is at as a platform.
I agree. Cool. Well, that was a conveniently timed internet outage because we're just about at time anyway. Anything else you want to get to before we call it a show?
No, I got through most of my questions here on the list. I think I'm just making sure we hit everything that I wanted to hit. I think we hit all of my questions here. So cool. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, iBlackers, thank you very much for being here on this show. It was great.
My pleasure. I appreciate the invitation.
Great conversations.
Happy to do it again anytime.
Now, we will be ending the YouTube portion of this stream. So for all of you watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. But if you want to catch the live Q&A after the show, you got to be here live every Saturday. Although this is the end of the season and likely not starting up Season 3 until January. Hoping to have Pixel by Pixel Studios on for the first guest of Season 3, so it'll be dependent on him for when Season 3 launches. So stick around for Q&A, and then hope to see you all sometime early in January for season 3. Anything you'd like to promote?
I mean, people can catch me live weekdays at noon, twitch.tv/iBlackish with an underscore. I also go live Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern. I also have a special event coming up December 24th, Christmas Eve. There'll be 1,000 pixel coins up for grabs and $100 in cash giveaways during that event.
Good stuff.
You'll be able to see. It'll be a really cool stream. I'm looking forward to it. So
I'm looking
2
forward
hours,
to it.
12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern, Christmas Eve.
All right. So we'll see y'all then, and thank you all for watching.
Appreciate it.